controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a sub-science here to make things make sense. I'm trying to remember the O-Town song.
Part of my liquid dreams.
Liquid dreams.
With a little bit of Janet Jackson's lifestyle and Janet Jackson's smile.
You got that body like Jennifer.
Wow.
Got the start of my liquid dreams.
My liquid dreams. That was the Lance Bass one.
Wait.
He's not in it, but like there was the equivalent. Who was?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, was Lance Bass bass? Yeah. He was always like, and I will.
Yeah, what's that video you showed me one time of them performing at the MTV Awards?
That was it.
And
that's
they
literally
turn his mic off.
They turn his mic off because he literally goes, and I will.
But it's really out of tune.
And it's bass. My whole point is that not
Craig,
bass?
that is what I don't think that's what he's doing.
He is. I think that Lance bass was always the bass because whenever he does sing, you're like, that's low.
I
and
don't think
bad.
he's the bass.
You think he's
Chime in, everyone.
You think
Lance
he's what
Bass
then?
bass?
Tenor?
Yeah, like baritone, I would say.
I think he's bass. I think he's in the barbershop
like one of the
quartet. He's
other
like
guys
bum
was
bum
the
bum
bass.
bum 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 bum. Just because like Chris Kirkpatrick had bass face doesn't mean he was bass. I think that
I don't know.
the gay one was bass, which is really weird. You think the gay one would not be bass, but in NSYNC they were breaking the mold.
I'm mixing up Backstreet Boys and NSYNC in my head. Like I don't know any of them, so.
Whoa, that's
It's
embarrassing.
been a long time.
Weren't you in a boy band?
No.
Oh, you seem
I
like
was
you
in
would
a
be.
Screamo band.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's begin to talk about liquid dreams, aka wet dreams, aka nocturnal emissions.
Did you read how it was also called oneirogonorrhea?
No.
It was like some studies were like nocturnal emissions, also known as oneirogonorrhea, and I was like, that is insane.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and I looked it up, and it was a scientific term, but I'm like, there's no way in hell that any human on this planet's ever used that word, because why would you? Like, it's confusing, and nocturnal emissions works too. I'm not even kidding. It's like and if you are someone who's used that word before,
Let us know. We get hundreds of messages. Where do we begin? Do we want to just explain, like, what is it? I'm sure most people know what a wet dream is, but some might not.
Well, it's an orgasm whilst sleeping, because men and women can have it. With
That
men,
is the common misconception that it's just a thing for like teenage boys.
Yeah.
That going through puberty, they have like, ejaculate in the middle of the night and wake up wet.
and I think it's because it's like maybe a little bit more obvious if you do wake up with your sperms in your sheets. Mm-hmm. But they said with women, a really like common thing that happens is like your vagina gets wet and lubricated, so you can I'm like, it's also a wet dream.
Yeah, totally.
But maybe
And
it's just not
also,
as obvious.
It's like people with vaginas versus people with penises.
Oh yeah, good point. Keep that language up. Mm-hmm. Don't want to get canceled today.
Yeah. Also, though, it's interesting because it doesn't usually associate it with like having a sex dream, but you don't have to.
No,
a lot of times there's no specific reason. You may not remember the dream. You may not have been dreaming in your own like world. Like your body is just doing it.
Yeah, 40% of like the ones that. Okay, all these studies are small. We need to start with that. So studying wet dreams is really funny because there's a lot of research, but they're small. And then I also read a study about how getting accurate information from teenagers about sex is really hard.
Yeah.
Because what they find is they'll do meta-analysis of people starting at age 14 to like 24. And only at 24 do they start to admit how much they were masturbating when they were 14.
Yeah, there's no way when you're that young.
Yeah, even if it's anonymous, people are like just
Scared.
not willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
So they were like, if you think about all of this research that's actually coming out of like younger people around sex and masturbation, there's this whole study trying to say like we all honestly have to take it with such a grain of salt. And it's almost better to study adults retroactively talking about their sexual activities
as
at that age.
like a teenager.
Yeah, because they're just so new and scared, and I can relate to that. But I'm like, that's so like funny that like we need to
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, because if you were being asked in a survey as a teenager about sex, even though it's anonymous, like A, you probably are afraid it's not. B, you probably also like I don't know, your brain just works differently. I feel like you're not like coming to terms with what the reality of things is at that point. And it's kind of embarrassing to even have to write it when no one's looking.
I remember though, I was like, I've talked about it a lot on this podcast. A stats can kid. I was so proud. And I remember the first time, I think I was like 12 or 13. Like I started young. I started before I can even remember. I just remember doing them. I don't know what the questions were.
Meaning you would get surveys and stuff as a representative for like what the
For this kind of
country or
stuff,
Ontario was like trying to understand about youth.
Yeah. And they would be completely anonymous. And I got to leave school and go to this room with this like random lady who I like built a relationship with. And when we did our last one, I like almost cried. And I was like, that's weird. She truly just like went on her phone and read a book while I did a thing for like 3 hours. I don't know why I cared that it was ending. But I remember the first time I got one, which was like, have you had sex? And I was like, what? And I was like,
you're like,
that's an option? Like it honestly was like messed with me. It was like,
might have tampered with your own little trajectory.
yeah, it was kind of like, wait, like I know that one guy at my school did, but he's a freak.
Yeah.
Like, and then it was
so
like,
interesting
but
to be like, you think I might have actually had sex?
Because they didn't
by
ask,
now.
Yeah, like and then I remember, and I was like, I started panicking. I was like, nah, nah. And I remember seeing it, and then almost being like, I want to lie and be like, yeah, because then it's like,
am I a loser?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do remember being really honest in them and really understanding it was anonymous. And I think if it had asked me about a wet dream, I feel like I want to say I would have been honest, but
because
maybe
like she wouldn't look at your answers, right? Like she was
No, it was like
she was
really
just in the room to be like a chaperone.
Oh yeah, and she would do this crazy way of closing it that was like very clearly like no
like when
one's
you
ever
vote,
gonna know,
and it's like done in a way that
it
you
had like
do
a
it,
little,
but someone has to hold it after, but they
and
don't see it.
very personal questions that were actually very disturbing, and like a lot of them I was just like, holy shit, I'm so happy I get to say no to like so many of these things. But I just think like these studies, a lot of them are scientists. They're not in that really regulated stats can way that like, who knows how they're doing it. That would make a kid just be like, I don't feel comfortable.
Whether they felt comfortable or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't even know.
I think it is also the difference of when you're young, you just kind of think differently.
Yeah.
And don't maybe track things as well or remember. Not that like suddenly you remember when you're older, but I don't know. I just feel like it's easier to come to terms with something that you might feel shame around when you're older as like not being shameful about. But when you're young, you might actually be like self-embarrassed.
Yeah.
That you don't even want to admit to yourself, you know?
So
but then
are
you're
we
older
gonna-
and you're like, oh, masturbating's not that embarrassing.
Are we going to admit if we had wet dreams?
I've never had a wet dream.
No.
Literally never had a wet dream.
Okay. If you look at this, it says, well, this is from 1986, a Journal of Sex Research, found that 85% of women said they'd experienced a nocturnal orgasm by the age of 21.
Oh, I saw that too.
So that's like so high. Mm-hmm. And then for men, it was also really high. What was it? Dang it. Oh, 83% of men in the US, this is a more recent study, said they had nocturnal emissions at some point in their life. 83%. So you're the minority.
Yeah, I've been jerking off since I was 5.
Oh my God.
So let's talk a little bit about like some of the like it also actually like regular masturbation does not mean you will necessarily not have nocturnal emissions.
But it does impact it.
It can,
but
but
it doesn't
there
mean
are
you
some
won't.
people
Yeah.
who like some studies are on people who have like very frequent wet dreams and don't want them. You know what I mean?
Dream life.
Well, no, not necessarily. Like you may not be getting like the pleasure of a sex dream.
Yeah,
you might just be
true.
waking up wet and having to change and be like, this is actually annoying.
Okay, yeah, no, that is
And I was
true.
gonna say, as much as it for the most part is correlated to an orgasm, they say it doesn't have to be, because even for a lot of like people with penises, for example, you can have semen leakage that is uncorrelated to an orgasm.
Okay, the one wet dream I had, I think it was that, because I remember waking up and I wasn't like, oh, okay.
Well, no,
Unless
but
it already had happened.
you can. Oh, you could have an orgasm and not know, and you might not be having a sex dream.
I sleep on my stomach, and it said
That's what-
you're more likely to
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Okay, so the research had said that it is like a when you're going through puberty, your hormones are like it's so
It's
much
most
more
common in people going through puberty.
Yeah, your
Both
hormones
boys
are
and
going
girls,
crazy.
yeah.
You're for the first time experiencing sexuality.
Your
You
body's
probably
like, "Let's
haven't done a
go."
lot. And then it's like in REM sleep is when it most likely happens.
Because you got boners.
You get boners
and
which we
hard
talked about.
clitorises.
But you're also like extremely sensitive. Like your genitals become more sensitive during REM sleep. And so they said it. People who sleep on their stomachs have them more often because you're already in a position to like stimulate it without meaning to.
I remember I was sleeping over at a friend's house. I was on a couch. And I
you
remember
had it at somebody else's house?
Yeah, and I remember like my underwear. Like I remember the specific. It was like You know when like gay people had to suffer through wearing like Joe boxers because like if we didn't, we'd be like so gay. I remember in grade 9 changing in the change room, and there was this poor guy who just was wearing like what would be considered like attractive briefs. Underwear now, like briefs, and everyone was like, "What the fuck? He's wearing briefs!" And I was like, "Whoa!" And I remember like it's like etched in my brain.
That
like,
you were like,
that guy's wearing briefs. I was wearing like Joe boxers that had ants on it, and like the ants were like glow in the dark.
Yeah, or like smiley faces. That was the classic.
Yeah, just being like, "I'm a boy. I love Blink 182," but it was like a Joe boxer vibe. You know what I mean? And it was just like, oh my god! Like and you do think that you pissed. It's like. I found it to be such a relief because I thought I'd pissed the bed out of sleepover.
Oh, so you were like,
but then I was like, oh,
why is it sticky?
Or like you just kind of know.
Did you know? Okay.
Like I did know. I remember waking up. It was like before like other people. It was like 6 a.m.
Okay.
And it wasn't like I don't remember any sexual dream. I just remember being like
waking up wet.
Yeah, and being like I fucking wet myself at like the age of like whatever, like 14, 15, like at like this is hell.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh my god, like this is a wet dream, and then kind of being like sweet and like going back to bed.
So you knew about it already. You had heard about it?
Yes, I had heard about it. Yeah, people on the playground were chatting because I think it was starting to happen because everyone starts talking about masturbating.
Yeah.
People start bragging about how they can come. Like,
I remember people started like quizzing each other, being like, well, what does semen smell like if you actually were able to have it?
Yeah,
Like,
I remember people saying that they'd like come and just like they were liars. Like, you know how like there's just those friends who are liars and you're like, I was like, I haven't come, and you look like a pipsqueak. Like, there's no way you've come. And they're kind of like saying it in this way where I'm like, no, you. Like in my head, I'm just like, yeah, sure, but in my head, I'm like, you didn't. But maybe that's just because I hadn't, and I was like, would you remember the first time you came? Oh my god,
I think so. Well, no,
I do.
Actually, I think
I was thinking about Tom DeLonge from Blink 182. Speaking of Blink 182,
God.
I was like thinking about him, and then I came and like. Was like my life's over
because you were like
I was like fuck, why was it a man? That's so bad.
I just have no distinct memory of wet dream. Like I'm like, I guess it's maybe possible, but I have a bad memory to begin with, hence me like buying this book about memory that I'm about to get. My What'd You Learn This Week was about memory.
But it's just because it's memorable. I think
that's what I mean. Like I do have more of a distinct memory of like the first time I came. And so
what a crazy time.
Well, I was going to talk about also like talking about morning wood because for, people with penises, it's like relevant because you're erect in REM sleep. You have like a neurotransmitter, norepinephrine, that actively, I love this fact about the penis. It's actively causing your penis to not be aroused.
Yes.
So it's like your penis's like natural state is to be full of blood.
Yeah.
Like the rest of your body has like blood flowing through it, but you have a neurotransmitter that's like through the day, unless you're aroused, like stopping blood from going in there. And then when you're in REM sleep, which happens like a handful of times through the night, your body often in many ways changes. So like you don't act out your dreams, like a lot of things change and norepinephrine kind of diminishes or gets turned off. And as a result, like often you get erections throughout the night while you're in REM sleep. If you wake up, why it's called morning wood is because people wake up out of dreams, and REM sleep is really close to like a light sleep. So it's easy to wake up out of dreams compared to like a deep sleep.
I don't really like feel like I get morning wood.
Oh, I do all the time.
Yeah, you do. Like I'm just like I
think that's a healthy thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a healthy
maybe
thing.
I'm
It's
not
literally
paying
for
attention.
health. Or maybe if I would say if you have a really good synced sleep schedule, it's when I like wake up out of a dream.
Yeah.
But I think if you have a good sleep schedule and you're in a good, like your body would naturally wake up, so you'd be out of REM.
Spoiled with sleep. Like I don't even set alarms. I'm just like, let's go. And so like I don't.
I know. I go to bed after you and wake up before you.
That happened like once this week, and now you're
it
pissed.
happens every day.
Well, I don't know. Learn how to sleep.
No, it's because I have anxiety, and I'm like, I need to feed the dog. I need to get up and let him out. And if I don't get out by a certain time, I feel really guilty.
Oh, okay.
So
like,
even
fine.
when I go to bed late, I'm like setting my alarm early and I have to get up.
13% of males. Or this isn't right. This should say people with penises. 13% of people with penises experience their first ejaculation as a result of nocturnal emission. Like they're like
that's their
oh
first
shit!
experience.
I wish that was mine because then I would have been like, maybe it was a girl.
Well, you might have just thought it was pee then. then you might have like it'd be at least you knew about it. If it's your first time ever,
that'll be so awkward. Like if your kid was like, "Mom, I wet the bed," and you go and you're like, "That's cum, hun." Like
it probably
that
happens.
Is like, I wet the bed. It's like, no, babe, that's semen. Like that's hell.
You're a man now.
Like ew, and the parent would definitely be so like, you did, and then like at dinner, like with the husband, be like,
yeah,
Frankie
it's such
came.
a weird age. I like do not want to have a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I love like there's so many other ages that are cute, and even after that, once they're like 18 and you can just like talk to them and it's fun.
But what if they're hilarious?
You're right. But
what if they're like I can't? No,
there's
that's not
just
funny.
so many things around that age that are like not,
gross.
and it is sad. It is sad that parents, and maybe this is just like a Western idea, is like you don't talk about those things.
No, yeah, that's
maybe
what I mean.
It's for the best.
It'd be so cool if like your
felt
kid
comfortable in
did.
it.
Periods are so cool.
Yeah, like
because you
and I
have
think
to
that-
talk to your mom and parents about them a bit more.
But I still think there is shame around it for. a lot
there
of
definitely is
people.
shame, but I'm like there's not so much shame that like people definitely don't talk to their parents about masturbation, or sorry, are more likely to not.
Yeah.
Whereas periods, there's like actually like things you need to do
and byproducts and stuff,
which
right?
should be free. Okay, I still cannot get over that.
Yeah,
like women have to pay.
Yeah,
for
they're just
tampons.
like-
it is absolutely insane. Like, and I just feel so bad. Like whenever people are like, "Feminism's doing great," I'm like, "It is," but like, no fucking man is ever going to allow that shit to be free. And it's just crazy because it's like that's not equality until that shit's free. Anyways. Periods, at least there is some stuff that has to be bought. So but then it's still, I'm not saying it's not shameful. I'm just like, there's a way that like,
yeah, I think like if you have like an open communication with your family, whether that's your parents or your kids, you can easily talk about that. And then maybe I've mentioned this on the pod before. My university roommate had a very sex positive. I don't know how positive it actually was behind the scenes, but their family talked about sex all the time.
Yeah.
Openly, laughed, made jokes, like made fun of each other.
I know the exact families in my life who are able to do that.
And I was like, that is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I was like, the first time I heard it, I was mortified.
You know what? It's interesting because you're a large family. I've noticed it in my friends who have large families because it's almost like there's more people that like
You have to deal
There's
with
more
it,
experiences,
yeah.
but your family wasn't Catholic.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, Catholic. But
all
you're
goes
right.
back
I
to
think
Catholic.
when you're in a space with lots of people, you can't avoid hiding. Like when a girl has her period, she might be able to hide it, or it might just be like, I need the bathroom too. You know what I mean? Like,
Our house was so small that I'm just like, oh,
but you only
my
had two
God.
kids.
That's what I mean. Like by the side. That's what I mean. Me immediately being like, yeah, it's fine. Like no one knew anything. But like if someone took a dank ass shit, like
that
we don't
lingers,
know.
you know.
And I guess that's not sex. That's just like poo.
But
But
you never had to share a room, did you? I had to
No.
share a room almost my entire life.
That's
because I like was
absolute
the middle
hell.
boy, so I like shared my older brother, and then as soon as I was old enough, and he got
That's
his
so
own room,
hell for this type of stuff, like the puberty stuff.
Yeah, it was in that age.
Oh
I
my-
finally got my own room when I was like almost finishing high school because my older
Your
siblings,
houses were so large, but it's just I guess they're like
but they're like 3 bedrooms, and there's
Yeah.
4 kids and
that's
2
true.
parents.
That's 6-bedroom house you need
yeah,
if
well,
everyone wants their
I
own.
mean 5.
Oh,
My
yeah,
parents don't
sorry.
want their own.
Sorry.
I mean nowadays, that's very progressive.
Yeah.
But at the time it was 5.
Okay.
Didn't know.
Also, this one again, these studies, it's on like sometimes hundreds of people. The highest ones were like thousands. It's like, and then they extrapolate to be like 83% of U.S. adults
Yeah. Mhm.
had a wet dream.
Extrapolate.
Yeah. So it's like, what? But anyways, this is another small study that they found 8% of people's dreams based on like self-reporting were sexual. And that 4% of those 8% of dreams would result in an orgasm. I was like, that's a lot.
Lucky.
I know. I was like, that's awesome. Imagine I got to orgasm to La Rosalia in my
I
dream.
honestly don't think I've ever had a dream orgasm.
Well, yeah, you haven't had a wet dream. What?
Yeah. I guess that's true.
Yeah, but like, what else? I have
just
sex
like, I would-
dreams, but whenever
me
they
too.
happen, I wake up with a pep inline step.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was the best
Oh.
night of my life.
But
And
don't
then,
they ever get cut out? Like mine are always cut off too soon.
Oh yeah, I'm always also going up on a
damn
roller
it,
coaster
trying to, like,
for like
remember.
hours, and I never go on the roller coaster. And then I wake up and I'm like, could have enjoyed that Hannah's Wonderland day, but instead I'm always anticipating it's like that was sex. Is it? No, I've had some like. No, yeah, I've had some good sex dreams.
They're real fun. It's like flying. It's like those are the two best kind of dreams.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever flown, but I've flown with a partner, if you know what I mean.
Oh my goodness.
But I'd never had a sex dream and then woken up and been like, wet dream. That one wet dream was the only one I ever had.
So do you think it just means like
I
I was trying to say
masturbate too much?
earlier-
Yes. I'm kidding.
That's why I was bringing it up earlier.
kidding.
It is maybe correlated, but it's like it doesn't mean if you masturbate and ejaculate a bunch, it doesn't mean you won't have.
But it does
dreams.
affect it. Like
Yeah.
I like a urologist I listened to on a podcast say that it does affect
Yeah, it makes
It's
sense.
not
like,
saying it
because
won't happen.
One of
but
the main theories is it's just like for at least people with penises, it's like cycling out semen, right? Like your body
yeah,
is.
I couldn't
like,
find much on that.
Me
but that is
either.
what
That's what I've
people-
always been told.
Yeah, but there wasn't much actual information
Yeah.
going back to them saying it's really hard to study. And because it's like, how do you literally think about it? How do you study wet dreams? They
Yeah.
You've never had one. I've had one.
and
They're
it's
really
like
rare.
so private at a time in your life when you're like not available, and it's random. It's like the reason that studying like a heart attack is hard. Like
Yeah.
you can't put someone like in a machine and know when they're gonna have
Because
it.
people, like scientists, want to know, is the composition different? Like, is there something? And they've done weird studies with people who have like night ejaculation issues and kind of studied it, but they're like, it's no different. And then they're like, well, why is this happening?
Yeah, I think that's what leads to the idea that like, okay, if your sperm is just sitting there for too long, maybe it's like good to flush it out, get some new ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
In
it's not a
terms of,
bad
like,
theory, but
fertility.
it's not like it's something that you should like
No, for sure.
know for sure. And I remember almost feeling like my health teacher told me that. And then when
That's what I thought too,
I
yeah.
read the studies this week. I was like, there
Nothing-
ain't enough
no
here.
one's
Like, where
mentioned
did
that, yeah.
why did like Mr. Breton say that?
It must have been. I don't know.
It's a smart theory, and honestly, like even when I taught science, sometimes
It
kids would
makes
ask me
sense,
questions, and
yeah.
I would just say my opinion. I'd be like, "This will shut him up." I don't feel like saying I don't know right now because I already feel stupid enough. I'm like, "This is why."
I really just wanted to. So like I found with these studies, like there wasn't very much. And when I was just using like Google Scholar to look up nocturnal emissions, they all seemed insane. Like nothing was modern. Everything like here are
oh
some
yeah,
titles.
they've come from like 1956.
Masculinity in flux, nocturnal emissions and the limits of celibacy in the early Middle Ages. That's like the top study that came up. I was like, what the hell? Nocturnal emissions and masturbatory frequency relationships, a 19th century account. And so I just wanted to read a little from that one, a little excerpt.
Oh my god, I love.
Because it's from someone measuring their nocturnal emissions and masturbation frequency between 1852 and 1858. And his name is Philip C. Van Buskirk. And the reason he did this, let me see. Like so many other young men 150 years ago, he was tormented by fears of the consequences that would result from masturbation and nocturnal emission. He studied the few medical books that were available aboard ship and learned that masturbation and nocturnal emission had dire results. Among other things, they sapped one's strength, caused innumerable degenerative conditions where symptoms of moral decay could prohibit his ever marrying or siring children and would, in all probability, bring about senility and premature death.
Oh my god, living in the 1800s is hell all around. Even if you're like a
You
white
can't even
man.
be alone and jerk off.
Yeah, like a white man named like Bartholomew with the most privilege
Yeah.
at the time was still like
Afraid,
tortured
yeah.
because his penis was gonna like
Like,
suck
I'm
his
so horny, but I'm gonna
literal-
die if I do it.
That's so funny.
Isn't that crazy? It goes on and on to be like how he was like so scared, and that's why he started recording for like 4 years how much he was masturbating.
The 1800s, no thank you.
No, thank you.
Nothing about that. Like nothing about that. Nowhere, no person, king, queen, nothing. I never want to be it. I'm so happy to have dodged the bullet of the 1800s.
Yeah. Do you think people will say that about our time at some point? Like in 100 years, they'll look back and be like, the 2000s? No, thank you.
Yeah, probably in 100 years. Climate change is coming.
Yeah.
So it's sort
They
of
might
like,
be like, oh, that was a nice time.
They'd be like, wow, remember when like the climate crisis
had
was
water?
in its infancy? And like, yeah, there was such thing as water. And sadly, like maybe this is... No,
Is
not
there
sadly.
any
Let's be
time
appreciative.
you would go back to before the 1800s? I guess that was
No,
like my
as a
question.
gay man,
True, yeah.
it's really risky.
Well, I
'cause then
mean,
you
like
get into
ancient Greece or something. You know, like, were you allowed to be gay there? I don't know. That's what everyone says.
actually, like maybe I'd be a hunter gatherer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't understand that. Like, oh, you could have lived till 80. Like I don't give a shit. And they actually had amazing lives. They barely like whenever like
Purpose.
Scientists have definitely, I think, exaggerated the positive benefits of the hunter-gatherer societies. But I will say, like, if you want to trace all issues, patriarchy, colonialism, climate crisis, it all goes back to the agricultural boom of post hunter-gatherer societies, in my opinion, from a lot of like, but this has been shoved down my throat by science writers.
Okay.
And so part of me is like, I could do hunter-gatherer as long as I could bang a man, which I'm sure I could. Like patriarchy came out of after agriculture.
Yeah.
I didn't know that
because like it was all. I imagine
linked.
that some hunter-gatherer societies might have been patriarchal, but
no, it was like literally like from my understanding, even of this book I'm reading now, women were able to forage and were able to sustain themselves without men. The men were hunting very shittily, like they were barely getting any food.
I love it. You take like the exact and most extreme opposite view. You're like, it wasn't like the men were doing fucking anything.
No, but it is crazy. The caloric intake that the women were bringing in with seeds and nuts.
Obviously, they were like working together.
Yeah, but my point is that there was no dominance over women that they could see.
Of men.
Yes, no, there was to like. You know, they need to procreate. But it's like, yeah, give their seed. But the concept of agriculture and money and all these things is like where patriarchy started to like happen, because now the women and like because of like farming, they weren't able to like sustain themselves and then all this stuff. Like they started to become like relegated to like looking after the kids while the dad created industry and blah, 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 blah. This is one feminist scientist writer who I'm currently reading's perspective, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like women were just as powerful as men in hunter-gatherer societies. So I would want to be alive then to gab with my ladies. And as long as when I got to hunt, I got to bang one.
Yeah.
And we also got to not have to hide it.
Like you said, bonobos, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, bye.
And like
they wouldn't mind.
I think hunter-gatherers were probably hotter than 1800s men.
Yeah, but they probably also all like, well, I guess you'd just be used to it. Yeah, I'm just thinking like if everyone stinks, then everyone stinks.
And I just think people stank more than 1800s.
Because like even like gorillas and stuff apparently like smell so bad.
Oh wow.
Well, if you're just like is out in the wild.
Yeah, but I'd smell bad.
I don't know. Yeah.
Anyways, my random answer is hunter-gatherers. That's as far back as I need to go. But anything from hunter-gatherers to now, I don't want.
It makes me so curious. I know we're so off topic, but I am.
Side note.
I am just like.
You don't want anything else?
Just really wish that I could go to those times to experience, because sometimes
What time?
Like anytime. No, just like even going to see the 1800s, because I often picture it being so different and brutal, or even thinking of like the Middle Ages, or I don't know, all these different, like when like Jesus was around in the 080 or whatever the fuck, whatever those dates are, and if that's real or not, who knows. But sometimes it feels like they're so different, but then every now and then I read or see something from those time periods and I think, oh my God, nothing's changed. Like humans are just humans, and it's like so similar.
Oh my God, I think it's so different.
I know it is so different.
The building's made of wood.
I know. I know it is true that it's so different, but I can't bring to memory exactly what I saw, but I feel like I watched a clip of someone from like the late 1800s talk.
Game of Thrones. It's not real.
No, it was like I'm probably over exaggerating when like the first camera recording was taken, but it just made me feel like, oh my gosh, it's weird to see people kind of act the same.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Obviously hunter-gatherer society was so different, and obviously maybe I'm thinking more like the last 100 years, how 100 years ago was very different, but also like we haven't changed that much.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
We have, but I think like culturally, of course, we're like so different, but I think cultures, it's like there's not this weird trajectory of one way. It's like cultures just kind of bounce.
I think 100 years ago, if that's likely what you saw, because like if we're thinking of cameras and like if it was a video,
and the first hunter-gatherer camera I watched the other day,
that was
really
recent.
interesting.
I think you're right. Like they wouldn't be as different. Like that's people's grandparents. You know what I mean? Like we know them. Like there are people like if you were born in 1922. Like that's not that long ago, so they could be. But I still think once you get into that 18, like if you get 200 years ago, it's like I think it's going to be different enough.
So different.
And every time they have a wet dream, they're like a demon sucked my soul out of my dick.
I want to know so bad what the things for our generation in 100 years or 200 years
people are
will
gonna
be.
Laugh at?
Yeah, like our crazy quote unquote beliefs.
Oh, they're gonna be like, randomly people stopped getting vaccines. Like when
no, do you think it'll be that though?
I feel like vaccines to me is like getting me. It's like,
but so many people will take the vaccine and the vaccines.
Yeah, but
just
so
saying, like,
many don't.
Yeah, but I would say like the majority of people are like comfortable.
Yeah,
taking
that's
vaccines.
fair. Maybe I'm focusing too much on.
So
like,
that's why I
people
think
who-
in the future they won't look at this time and be like they didn't take vaccines.
You mean
Or-
like what's the equivalent of having a wet dream and thinking
and
your
thinking
soul's
you're
getting
like the
sucked out of your
devil's
dick?
gonna like curse you and that you're a degenerate and that you're actually like falling apart. Like obviously there's no similar thing.
Well,
but there's
what are
probably
there, like-
something we do culturally, like maybe our obsession with like staring at screens. Like maybe they won't have screens.
Oh
so
my
they'll
god,
be like
the regulation of the phone. I think that like in the future, people are going to be like, you were all unregulated and you just
just,
allowed
like-
these companies to hijack your neurons.
Oh my god, it will be like you were so uncivilized. Like
Yeah,
you just it was like
sat-
doing drugs all the time.
You just were doing
A society of
coke
drugs.
all day, and you were just sitting there looking at your phone. On TikTok, you allowed this algorithm. Like you all talked about how the algorithm took over your brain
And it
whilst
just did.
just doing it.
Sometimes I think of Wally and I'm like that they really called it.
You mean like all the blubbery people just like
Sitting in phones, like sitting in chairs, staring at
Yeah.
phones. And like at the time, it was obviously still like a thing. Like phones existed, but it has progressed
Yeah.
to more of a degree where like I stare at a screen for so much of
So
my
it was
life.
like smoking like on planes where we all look back wasn't that long ago insane. I think it'll be unregulated use of our social media and phones. Like and subscribe to this podcast and continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like we are living in like a weird like we're making our money off of it.
Yeah.
But that's just one prediction.
Yeah. No, that's like
That's a
one
fun
element.
thought experiment.
I know. I'm
Wet
trying to
dreams, I think, like we're good with those. Like
Yeah,
they're
we've
no
moved
longer
past them.
they're no longer
Not
gonna
significant.
suck people's. They're not gonna.
Yeah,
be
there's not
shameful.
really any like physical. Maybe I'm just not thinking of it, but there's not. Really, I think we've like come to terms with human bodies. It's like they didn't like the advent of like scientific thinking was only starting, you know, like in the early 1800s or whatever.
So there's
it's
got to
like-
be more to that. Though. Like there is. We are also science-minded people. Like we do believe
true.
in the laws of nature. There are still a lot of people who believe in like.
And interestingly, maybe it'll be like how we thought we could solve everything with science. Like I'm not trying to say science can't like help us so much, but
Yeah.
as I've grown older, I've also been like, it's okay to like, I don't know. There's a weird line I'm trying to straddle now of like, I'm not like super spiritual and I don't believe in a lot of like things that feel sort of magical, but there's part of me that's like, I don't know. There's probably things science doesn't understand. And maybe like we're looking now at like indigenous cultures and even like hunter-gatherer cultures and being like, actually parts of what they did, they had it right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they were healthy in these ways that we didn't realize till now. And they had like great communities and like,
Ooh, yeah, capitalism. People will look back at capitalism and be like, lol, you literally like worked your whole life.
yes.
Like for a company that you hate.
Actually, that is interesting.
Like literally
Work.
to sacrifice your love of your friends and family for quote unquote success. Like
work
I
is
think
work is crazy.
Work is
like
gonna be
looking at
something.
that our dog is laying down right there and
Yeah.
that his life is just like
yeah.
just sleeping and eating
And we're
having
insane. We're like,
fun.
we want a dog, so we got to work harder to pay for a dog. Like
Yeah.
you just kind of like the way that the world has been created. The climate crisis will sadly many people will die for I think that to be the like catalyst for anti-capitalist change that could give people enough perspective to look back at our time and be like those idiots. Like they were so obsessed with money and wealth and it like ruined their lives. Whereas we're just like, oh my God, do you want to get bottles at the club? Or like whatever, like some dumb
Yeah,
thing.
the relationship to work will be interesting. Where people are like, I used to work 8 hours a day, and they'll be like, wait, we don't
Why?
work anymore.
Yeah, we have universal
basic income.
basic income. These are all very utopian ideas that like
Yeah.
I hope happen. Also the way that we just give all of our like assets to the CEOs, like all essential workers have lost money and had their payment capped in the last 2 years, whereas CEOs have
like
made
making more than
yeah.
ever.
So it's like that's broken. Like I'm sure someone could zoom
I
out
see.
and be
So
like,
those systems
LOL.
we might look back at and be like, that's crazy that they had those. I mean, obviously, especially if there's like any type of revolution, like that's gonna be looked back at.
It's kind of like why people who like love capitalism and money. It's like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Because I think that is a little bit of like the scientific minded approach is like, well, we know that's bad. Like if you look at it, like if statistically, we know that obviously there have been
I think
good
there's a lot of people
things.
that argue that. Like I don't feel like I'm
No, but with the climate,
versed
with
enough.
now. With
yeah,
now.
but I think some people still believe that capitalism is needed to solve the issue as well. Like, I don't know. I'm not really making a stance here. I just think some people are like, what is your alternative?
Universal basic income for all.
But that's not
tax the rich.
anti-capitalist.
Yeah,
Taxing the rich isn't anti-capitalism.
Oh, is it not? Isn't it a
like
form of it?
in the structure of capitalism?
Oh, sorry. I
wealth.
guess I like don't really know how, like, a world outside of capitalism right now is so foreign that it's like I can't picture it. Like when I'm thinking 200 years, I'm like things will change, and I think that it could be gone by then, like 200 years from now, especially with the climate crisis. I more mean like it's an anti-capitalist in this day and age to just be like we need to tax the hell out of the ultra rich. That's the weird thing that some people don't. Let's just start there. When people don't want to do that, I'm just like, well, I don't get that.
We got to just start there.
Yeah, like that's the one thing where I'm just like, what? Like what even like I don't know.
Why are
maybe
you
there's
rooting for them?
yeah, maybe, and like isn't it because people think that they might be them or something?
I don't know.
That's what I always thought. It's like because the person you're talking to is like, well, what if I make $1 billion? I'm like, well, then you just give away a bunch of it.
I don't know. I think people also have these like preconceived notions that if you made that much money, you must have worked so hard to get it.
Girl, we all have 12 hours in a day. We all have 24 hours. Oh my God. It's also so funny. I'm like, oh God, we all know that essential workers work harder than everyone else. Mm-hmm. They're essential.
And the backbone of society. And literally called essential.
It's also, they're called essential. Like it's crazy that like we've just stopped banging our pots
There was
and
an
pans.
amazing chart I saw come out recently that compared salaries to how many hours people work. And it was like between going from, like a $40,000 salary a year up until like $1 million a year, and it was the difference in hours was so like nothing.
It
was like a graph like this that was maybe only 2 hours a week different or 4 hours a week different.
Oh my God, freaking CEO! Like we'll end here because you've probably heard us talk about this forever. But we've been in these rooms with CEOs. They get paid so much money to fly all over the world and read off teleprompters badly. Like literally, like we see them at all these presentations and they're like, we are here today to talk about how we are going to be changing the world with our new software. And it's like, you're reading that badly. And then they're like, we're stressed because people come to us and they're like, a bunch of people died because of what your company did. And then we have to feel bad. And it's like, yeah, you do. You're getting paid so much money and do something about it. And then they don't.
Anyway,
okay, well,
dreams.
that was wet dreams.
We always end up here.
Yeah, we do. So thank you so much for listening. Make sure do you like these? No, what do? You subscribe? What do you do?
I thought you were asking like, do you guys even like these?
No, like you hit something. Oh,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, you can leave it. You can leave a thing on. Yeah, you can leave a review. If you're on YouTube, you can.
And if you're watching on YouTube, look at these shorts. I got them from my trainer, and they're
that booty.
Oh, yeah, look at that butt. Oh, you're missing out. You see the butt.
But if you're only watching the video, you're missing out for the first half of the podcast. That's only
I'm more
audio.
just trying to say these are straight person shorts. Do you see that?
Yeah. Every time I see you now, I'm like, who's that man?
Yeah, they go to my knee, which is rare in the gay community. Okay. Thanks for listening.
All right.
Bye.
See y'all.